Hello and welcome to episode 3 of Catching the Facts, an uncensored view of D1 college football. I'm your host, Dan Sisk.
And I'm Eric Schroeder.
So we have 5 really interesting college football games to talk to you guys about today. We have Penn State versus Ohio State. We have Pitt versus SMU. Then we've got Miami versus Duke, Louisville versus Clemson, and South Carolina versus Texas A&M. So Eric, let's get into it.
Yeah, to start off, the Ohio State-Penn State game. Ohio State wins that one, 20-13 in Happy Valley. They had 358 total yards, 182 passing yards, 176 rushing yards. Then Penn State had 270 total yards, 150 passing yards, 120 rushing yards.
Yeah. From the get-go, I mean, I was watching this game pretty intently. I was actually off campus and at Hershey Park yesterday, so I was watching a lot of this on my phone. And Ohio State, even from the second that Zion Tracy caught that pick six from Will Howard, from that moment on, Ohio State was just in complete and utter control. I'm going to get into this, Eric, because I have to vent. I have to vent pretty extensively. As the viewers and listeners know, I am a big Penn State Nittany Lion football fan. And I've been saying for weeks, have I not, Eric, that Ohio State was going to win this game.
You have.
So, the anger that I am about to express on air is rooted in frustration. Okay? Don't get me wrong. I'm angry, but it is a byproduct of the dysfunctional, abusive relationship that this fan base has had with James Franklin and his coaching staff from the second that the 2016 season ended, when they finished 5th in the country. And I'm done. Okay? I'm finished. So let me get this straight, James. You go into the press conference and you say that no one should be looking into the mirror more than me. Yeah, and that would be an understatement. You did not give Tyler Warren the ball until the second half. The second half! He doesn't get the ball until the second half, and 3 weeks earlier, he has one of the greatest games in the history of the NCAA for a tight end, and you don't give him the ball until the second half. You have the ball inside the 5, ready to tie, and you don't give him the ball once. You don't give him the ball once. Not once. Not once. I don't even know what to say. You don't have a single offensive touchdown. Your only touchdown is a pick six on a fluky throw. That was your only touchdown. Other than that, you had to settle for field goal after field goal from 30 to 40 yards out. You have no offense. Drew Aller. Again, Eric, I'm just going to be repeating this again. I'm done with pocket passes for Penn State.
Okay.
I'm done. I've had enough. Okay? Sean Clifford didn't work. Christian Hackenberg didn't work when he was under Franklin. Now Aller's not working. The only one that worked was a dual threat in McSorley. And Bo Pribula also worked for a significant chunk of the Wisconsin game. So I don't know, James. How about you read the room? How about you see which quarterbacks are working with your system and which ones aren't? Drew Aller had all the hype in the world. Number 1 quarterback prospect in his class. Everyone was hyping him up. Everyone was shocked that he didn't go to Ohio State. And now Ohio State, Ryan Day's praising to whatever God he worships that Drew Aller is not on his staff right now. Bo Pribula should have been in that game the second half started. And I do not understand the logic behind sticking behind Drew Aller. You did the same thing, James, with Sean Clifford. And you stuck with him, and he was there for a million years. You kept him there, and you kept him starting, with the exception of injuries, obviously, when he should have been out. He shouldn't have been playing. The loyalty with this man, Eric, makes me want to vomit. Just the mere mention of James Franklin makes me nauseous. This man is anything but an elite college football coach. He's anything but an elite college football coach. I was saying that this team did not deserve to be 3rd in the country. And yesterday, they could not have made a more clear argument. He never wins the big game. He's never going to win the big game. I'll be in the ground before they beat Ohio State. I'll be in the ground before they beat Michigan again. I'll probably be in the ground, Eric, before they beat the new entries into the Big Ten in Oregon and probably USC. I'm going to be in the ground. I'm not going to be alive to see it. Oh, God. My God. Warren led in rushing yards. He had 47 rushing yards. He was your leading rusher. You have two high-quality running backs in Singleton and Warren, and they can't do a thing. Please, Socrates, give me the knowledge to understand. I don't get it. Okay, Eric, I'm done.
All right. Well, both these coaches, they had a chip on the shoulder coming into this game. Ryan Day, 2-7 versus top 5 opponents.
How about you mention James Franklin's 1-12 going in?
James Franklin was 3-19 versus top 10 opponents, 1-7 at home.
My God. 1-7 at home. That's oh God.
And that crowd was rocking too to start the game. They had all the momentum after Zion Tracy read that interception perfectly. They had Emeka Ibuka in the slot and then Jeremiah Smith out wide. Smith ran the slant while then Emeka Ibuka ran a seam. Zion pulled with Emeka at first, and he saw Howard's eyes, jumped the route, took it back for 6. Yeah. That's a great play by Zion Tracy.
It was a great play.
But then an even better interception. Davison Igbinosun. Crazy interception. One of the best I've ever seen.
Agreed.
To take away 6 points at the end of the first half. I mean, it was just a great play. And then also earlier in the game, Ohio State caught Penn State in man. All the receivers were on the left side. Then Howard checked to a shovel pass to the right to Judkins, ran for 20 yards. So that's the things that kind of – that's what coaching – that's a coaching error.
My God.
I mean, if you got all the receivers on one side, you got to have somebody in the middle.
Yeah.
You just can't – you can't be playing man there. You got to be playing zone.
And here's the other thing. Last year, Penn State had one job to do. Stop Marvin Harrison. So what did Marvin Harrison do? He had 11 catches for 162. Okay? That was Penn State's one job last year, and they didn't do it. This year, you know what was weird? Jeremiah Smith only had 55 receiving yards. It's not like he had a crazy game. He didn't. Okay? Unlike last year, Penn State did a decent job stopping this offense. Obviously not a great job, but they did a decent job. This is all an offensive problem. James Franklin and Andy Kotelnicki are 100% of the issue right now. 100%.
Yeah, and they also, Penn State, they realized that, like, their actual offense was not working. So they were trying to get tricky. Ohio State was reading it perfectly every time. Now they did, later in the game, they ran a direct snap to Katron Allen where he flipped it to Aller. Then Aller just went backwards. When you hand it off to Drew Aller, you aren't fooling anybody.
No.
Because the safeties are in man. They're dropping back. They aren't worried about the QB running.
And Aller can't move.
Right.
So if you give it to him, you know he's not going to scramble.
Right. So, yeah, if he does throw, the safeties will be back there. And if he runs, the linebackers and linemen are going to get him. And he's not fast. I just don't understand that play at all.
How Pribula was not in that game befuddles me to no end. I think he had 2 snaps.
Yeah, he came in 2 snaps in the first quarter. And that's for the first drive. And that's it.
I remember him, watching that drive. And again, they put Aller in. What they do, settle for a field goal. What a shocker. Oh, my God.
Now, Ohio State's defense was also mixing up the looks. Late in the third quarter, they were dropping into zone, and they were taking away the throwing windows for Aller. Then if they ran man, the windows wouldn't have been open. But
yeah.
And then since they were running man, it was being taken. The little windows were being taken away. Then Aller was just getting sacked. So I mean, the Ohio State defense really did a great job of controlling Drew Aller's arm ability to where he just had no time to throw.
Yeah. I mean, it really is just so disheartening. And again, I sound angry, and I am, but this is the 8th straight year they've beaten Penn State. I'm not surprised. But the way it happened, if Jeremiah Smith had 180 receiving yards, I'd be like, okay, he's that good. It happens. But he didn't. And that's what makes it so infuriating. That final drive will haunt my dreams for the next week. And I have multiple presentations this week, so that's not going to be good for me. I just, oh my God.
Yeah, and also,
I'm so angry.
To end the game, they were inside the 5. They run it 3 times with Katron Allen.
Yeah.
Then they pass it, incomplete. That's 2 times that game that they were inside the 5. They didn't cash in, and that's the game right there. So, I mean, just inexcusable coaching errors from James Franklin.
Those 4 play calls inside the 5 were mind-numbingly stupid. Mind-numbingly stupid. I was watching it live, and it will end you. It will end your sanity. Okay. I mean, and honestly, trust me when I say I was at, like I said earlier, I was at Hershey Park yesterday visiting a friend, and I was watching the game obviously in lines, and I was in a ride for one of the roller coasters when those 4 plays happened, and there were like 4 or 5 pockets of Penn State fans in that line, Eric, and they just you could just see the utter frustration and disappointment in everyone's faces, and it was just so disheartening. It was so disheartening. I mean, again, I'm not one to huff the hopium because I've been telling our listeners this for weeks, but the way it happened, oh gosh. Again, if Jeremiah Smith had an amazing game, I'd be content. I'd be apathetic towards it, but that's not what happened, and that's what's so frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're right. I mean, he didn't have a great game. Then below him was Brandon Innes, 2 receptions for 33 yards and a touchdown. Like, they weren't controlling on the air.
They weren't.
At all.
They weren't.
Penn State was just making some costly mistakes, and just it all comes down to the coaching. Yeah. Now, to set up that 1st and goal at the 4, Tyler Warren lined up a QB, which that's huge. I mean, he can line up anywhere.
Yep.
And that's the thing. James Franklin, I don't think uses him correctly.
Correct.
Or at least he used him correctly to an extent. Yeah. He'll line him up, in the slot, in the halfback, quarterback, whatever. But if he does it a little more and mixes up the looks where Warren is, just to kind of even catch the defense off guard, even if it's a fake.
Yeah.
He's got to start using him a little more because he's one of the best tight ends in college football right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to set up that 1st and goal, they lined him up at quarterback. They did a fake handoff to Katron Allen, and then he just runs up to the 4-yard line. That was a big game.
Yeah. And
then did not cash in on that drive. It's heartbreaking, really, for any Penn State fan.
Yeah. Yeah. And guys, Eric's an Ohio State fan. I just want to stay on the record. I have been very impressed with your respect towards me and your respect towards Penn State over the last, how long have we recorded? 13 minutes. I'm genuinely impressed.
I mean, look, they did a good job.
They didn't do a good job.
No. Look.
They didn't. They didn't get under touchdown on offense. What do you mean they did a good job? Okay, I take it back. 0 respect from Eric. 0, none. Nada, nil. Nothing.
Okay, yeah, okay.
I gave you too much credit.
They did an all right job, we'll say.
That's still generous.
It all comes down to James Franklin. I mean, it's a good team. They got the weapons to go deep, but it all comes down to coaching. And they just signed him to a 10-year deal, too, so he's sticking around for a while.
Yeah. He's one of the highest paid coaches in the sport.
Yeah, and I saw after some fans were like, some dude was like yelling at him in the stands.
Yeah, you can't let that happen. I saw the video this morning, and you can't let that happen. Yeah. Also, last thing on, at least for me, you can keep going after this if you want, but Abdul Carter, I know you're talented. You were Big Ten Defensive Player of the Week like a month or so ago, right? Am I remembering that right?
Yeah.
He's very, very talented, but he was making some really, really stupid mistakes, particularly in the second quarter with penalties. Mm-hmm. And I know he's projected to be a top 10, top 15 draft pick. He's just so raw. I thought he was more NFL ready than he is.
Mm-hmm.
And as considering he's probably their best player on defense, definitely one of the 2 or 3 best players on defense. That was really disappointing to see.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
and it is what it is.
I mean, they didn't really have that many penalty yards at all. Both these teams stayed very disciplined in that aspect. Ohio State only had 15 penalties on 2, and then Penn State had 5 penalties for 45 yards.
Yeah.
So it's not like that. Like, penalties weren't that much of a factor, but I get what you mean. I mean, Abdul Carter, he's got to stay a little bit more disciplined in that aspect.
Because here's the thing, Eric. Those penalties led to the few points that Ohio State got.
Yeah,
on
exactly.
offense. So that's on him.
Yeah.
You gotta accept it. Okay, I need to start laughing at Pitt. We need to change the subject.
Okay.
Is that it for Penn State?
Just one more thing that Penn
go.
State went from 4 to 7 in the AP poll.
Honestly, that's
Generous.
Oh, sorry, didn't they go from 3 to 6? I think I saw.
Oh, they dropped 4. They dropped 4 spots. They're at the 7th spot right now.
7 spot.
Yeah.
That's. I mean, it was a 1-score game at home against the number 4 team in the country.
Mm-hmm.
Now number 3.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. As I've said, they're going to make the playoff. They're just going to get murdered in the first round by a legit team.
Right. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
I'm not. Again, the rest of their schedule is not that difficult. They'll finish with 1 loss, and honestly, for James Franklin, that's like him. That's the second coming of Christ.
Yeah.
But I just,
If we want to talk about
the way they lost is just so sad.
If we want to talk about getting killed by a good team, let's move on to Pitt.
Let's do it. Okay, Eric.
All right. Well, Pitt played SMU at SMU, and then they lost 48-25.
No, keep going. I don't want to interrupt.
Oh, you're all good.
Keep going.
Makes sense. SMU, 467 total yards, 306 passing yards, 161 rushing yards. Pitt, 453 total yards, 350 passing, 103 rushing yards. They just got demolished. I mean, they have no O-line.
Their O-line is awful.
O-line is not good enough to protect Eli Holstein.
Who's a good quarterback. He's really talented. I'm sorry, Pitt fans. This was your year. You finally had a quarterback, and they can't protect him to save their lives.
He's still young. They'll build an O-line around him. They're not gonna. They're gonna. He's their guy.
Maybe.
You think so?
I would hope that they would protect him eventually.
I mean,
I would hope. I hope? Because I don't like Pitt. Let me change my phrasing. I would imagine that they would try to, but I mean, that's easier said than done. Mm-hmm. The lines are the two, arguably, besides the quarterback, the lines are the most important positions on a roster.
Right.
It's really difficult to get good ones, especially who's going to Pitt to play college football.
Right.
Who's going to Pittsburgh to play college football? Mm-hmm. That's a tough sell, especially considering all of the elite schools that are in the general area. Your Ohio States, stuff like that. That's a tall order.
Yeah, like nobody's picking Pitt over Ohio State, Penn State. These,
they aren't.
Big schools. Pitt struggled badly. They only had 18 rushing yards to start the third quarter. Then their first touchdown came from Desmond Reed with 37 seconds left in the third. Their first offensive touchdown.
Wow.
Made the score 11-34. Then Eli Holstein throws a pick on 1st and goal. It was deflected off a Reed into the hands of Jonathan McGill.
That's not his fault.
No,
he's gonna. That's not a bad interception.
Desmond Reed wasn't looking.
That's entirely on Reed.
So
and Holstein for not reading the field correctly. That's on him too.
Yeah, and SMU, they started out just on fire.
They had a grudge. On their shoulder after after Duke.
6 turnover game.
After Duke after they. Frankly, it's a miracle that they beat Duke.
Yeah.
And considering that, I think they had a chip on their shoulder and it worked out.
No, I think so too. I mean, they got hot. Second quarter, they started rolling. They never looked back, scoring 24 points. They held Pitt to 0. And then a rare missed kick from Ben Sauls as well. He doesn't miss that often. He's pretty automatic. Score at the half was 31-3. SMU.
Oh my God.
They just dominated every aspect of the game.
24 points in the second quarter.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. Yeah, they dominated every aspect of the game. Defense was flying to the ball. They really turned it around from the last week's 6 turnover performance.
They did.
They did win that game, but this game they had 0 turnovers and they really improved. Yeah. Kevin Jennings, he finished 17 for 25, 306 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. And the Pitt's defense is good too.
It's solid. It's respectable.
They almost fooled everyone. Last week they played amazing versus Syracuse. Kyle McCord, 5 interception game. This week they get 0 takeaways.
I think the defense, relies on the takeaways. So if you look at the takeaways, it's just, a standard run-of-the-mill defense.
Yeah, I agree.
They don't have a lot of goal line stops in them.
Yeah, that too.
They don't.
Yeah.
And you're going to need those to beat the tougher teams in this. Well, I think SMU's probably one of the toughest teams in the conference. I still think Clemson's a little better. We'll talk about Clemson in a sec. But, that's the defense was just, they were, again, they rely on big plays to really function as a unit. So wearing them down is really easy. And that's what SMU did.
Yeah, they did. Brashard Smith, he was just getting open everywhere. 23, he's the running back. 23 carries, 161 yards on the ground, 2 touchdowns. That's huge. I mean, they if you can't stop the run, they can just control the game, control the pace of the game, hold the ball as long as they want, really, which that's huge. And then, Pitt couldn't do anything. Their O-line is just terrible.
Yeah, I said that the only way that they're going to really be competitive in the ACC is if they clean up the O-line. Mm-hmm. And I was saying that to my friends at Pitt before we even started this podcast. And they have not done that in the month and a half since I said that. And the fact that it looks like they haven't even tried. And that's really unfortunate. Well, again, it's not unfortunate. Okay, I'm done. Well, that's not true. I'm going to continue laughing once I get more facts out to laugh at. However, looking ahead at Pitt's schedule, I think that Clemson is almost an automatic loss. Clemson is a very physical team, and they're going to just wear down that Pitt defense. They're going to put up 30.
Yeah,
on Pitt's defense, and we'll see if the O-line can allow Holstein to score as many points. It's possible, but right now I don't see it.
Yeah, and then the only point Holstein didn't score any points.
He did.
Nate Yarnell did end up coming into the game to finish the game. He went 9 for 10, 99 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. He played better than Holstein. I mean, is it possible? I know Holstein
Holstein's in.
Holstein's in. He's their guy.
Yeah, no. Holstein is the guy. And it's not like Penn State where the difference in quality against difficult opponents is like night and day with Howard and Pribula. This is the situation where Holstein is the first ray of hope that this program has had since Kenny Pickett and Jordan Addison left. You've got to.
And he's only a freshman.
Yeah, so. He's a freshman. Yeah, it's if he was a junior and he'd been there for a couple of years, we'd be having a different conversation.
Right.
But he's still getting the lay of the land, and he's got to play and fail in these games. Because you're right, Darnell played better. The only way Holstein's going to improve is if he struggles in games like this.
Yeah.
So you got to leave him in.
Yeah, because their offense, it's not like they're not very explosive. They got a few playmakers. But if their defense plays bad and they're not getting these takeaways and setting them up, they're going to lose every game.
You're right.
If the basically what I'm trying to say, if the offense can't produce at a high level versus a good team, like last week, their offense really didn't do much. It was all their defense. That was a defensive game.
Yeah. The defense scored more than the offense.
Yeah, and you're not going to win games like that. Just
not
relying
against,
on lucky
Clemson.
interceptions and against good teams like that. Bad teams, you can get away with it. It's whatever,
Agreed.
But versus a ranked opponent, you can't be doing that.
Yeah, just pathetic. I mean,
yeah.
But okay, I've laughed enough at Pitt.
Yeah. So now SMU is 3-2-1 versus Pitt with a win streak of 3. Pitt drops 6 spots to 23. And then SMU jumps up to 15, moving up 5. So.
I actually see on here they moved up to 13.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so SMU moved up to 13. I think that's reasonable. I mean, they're definitely, at this time, they're probably, I still think that Clemson's the best team in the ACC, but according to the Associated Press, Miami is still the best, and now SMU's number 2.
Okay.
But I just feel Clemson has more raw talent than those two teams, but they don't have as good results.
Right.
I'll be curious to see. Next week is Virginia again. Pitt's playing Virginia. That'll be a gimme. And then you've got Clemson and Louisville. And based on what we're going to talk about Louisville in a couple minutes here. We'll see if Eric and I were wrong about Louisville, and maybe that's unfortunately going to be a rough game for Holstein too. Well, not unfortunately. Okay, I'm done. Okay, let's move on.
All right, moving on to Miami. They started out slow, but they ended up winning 53-31 versus Duke at home.
Their second half was insane.
Yeah, insane second half.
Insane second half.
They only had 17 points in the first half, then they turned it up. And then, so they had 526 total yards, 400 passing yards, 126 yards on the ground. And then on Duke, they had 405 total yards, 325 passing, 80 rushing. So
yeah, Duke was beating Miami 28-17 halfway through the third quarter, and over the next 15 minutes, that was spread across the third and fourth quarters. Miami outscored them 36-3 in 15 minutes. 15 minutes. That's impressive. Especially against the Manny Diaz defense. Mm-hmm. He's a very respectable coach. I like him a lot. Obviously, from his time at Penn State.
Now, what are your thoughts on Cam Ward?
400 yards, 5 touchdowns. I mean, that's hard to dispute. That's probably his best game. Mm-hmm. He might be legit. I feel my gut tells me that this is more of a Jordan Travis thing.
Okay.
Where he's definitely an improvement for the program, but he's not a transcendent player. Jordan Travis was not a transcendent player at Florida State. Jordan Travis just took them out of the gutter. There's a difference. And I feel Cam Ward is more in that camp than being a legit NFL caliber prospect. But for a college quarterback, he's very good. And Miami right now is definitely leaning on him, as they should.
So you think that Cam Ward is good now, but once he gets to the NFL?
Well, I mean, it's impossible for me to comment on that right now.
Okay.
I just feel that he screams Jordan Travis to me in terms of how truly at the core talented he is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, look, I think Cam Ward's legit.
Okay. You can make that argument.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna argue with you on that because you have an argument.
Right. I mean, I think Cam Ward is really good at escaping pressure. He has great poise in the pocket.
He does.
He knows when to run.
Watching those drives, I didn't watch the fourth quarter, but I watched some of the ones in the third, and his control of that offense in the third quarter was very impressive.
Yeah, and I think now Miami's O-line isn't the greatest, and with him having that slow drop back that he has, he's under pressure immediately.
Yeah.
So he's kind of always running for his life and having to make these good plays, but he's making them.
But he can make them.
Right. I mean, he's making pro reads, and I think at least he's making pro reads and he knows when to throw it away.
He doesn't make a lot of pretty throws.
Yeah.
He's not gonna give you a beautiful pass down the sideline,
mm-hmm.
but he's very smart, and he knows, like you said, he knows when to throw it away, and he knows when to check down. He knows all of that very, very well.
Yeah, I mean, even the first drive, they went down. Cam Ward did a good job of escaping the pressure. Then he rolled out, and the ball was tipped right into Restrepo's hands, who's also a great receiver.
Yeah.
Right into the corner of the end zone, which he actually broke. He has the most catches and most yards in program history, Xavier Restrepo.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's crazy.
Yeah, he broke the school's record receiving yards with 2,573, surpassing Santana Moss's record of 2,547.
Impressive.
And then he had his 182nd catch, tying Mark Harley's record. So he's legit also.
Yeah. Yeah, I still am not buying the Miami stock.
Okay.
I stand by it. This was a very good win against a Duke team that beats up on non-conference opponents, but then crumbles when they play in conference. We'll see what happens. They're probably going to win the ACC. They'll probably beat SMU because that's likely going to be the ACC title game, unless Clemson and/or Pitt go on a miraculous run and get some help and make the ACC title game. But right now, the conference title game is looking like Miami, SMU, and Miami will probably win that game. We'll see what happens when they play the big dogs of the SEC and Big Ten. I still feel that it'll be tough for them to get past first or second round, but stranger things have happened, and I'm more than willing to be proven wrong, because that'll give us a great discussion on
Yeah.
this show. So we'll see what happens. But
Yeah, and I mean Duke was also they're making mistakes in the third quarter. Cam Ward threw it right in between two Duke defenders to Restrepo. It's because they were playing zone. They didn't go with the man. The DB went right to the middle of the field.
yeah,
And you just can't do that. You know, you got to kind of make adjustments on the defensive side. So yeah, I mean, they had a good game though, I think. I mean, it was close for a while.
it
They started
was.
pulling away.
But that second half, 36-3 over a 15-minute span,
Mm-hmm.
that is remarkable. That is insane. That is every element of your team working at optimal performance.
They were clicking on all cylinders in
Yeah.
the second half. They made the right adjustments.
They did.
They just played great.
Yeah,
First half, they started off real slow.
they did.
Right.
right.
It looked like Duke was going to win that game by far.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
second half adjustments matter, and the coaches that make them, they'll win. I mean,
Yeah, Miami's remaining schedule is Georgia Tech, Wake Forest, Syracuse. They'll win all three.
Yeah,
of
they'll
those.
win
They'll
out.
steamroll.
Yeah.
They'll win out. And again, SMU, they'll probably win that game.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's how they compete against the big dogs of Big Ten and SEC, and I'm very, very curious to watch those games.
oh yeah, for
Very
sure.
curious. You have anything else on them?
I mean, let's see. I do not.
Okay, we'll move on to Louisville Clemson. Eric, what was going on there?
All right, so for the basic facts, 21-33, Clemson lost at home. They had 450 total yards, 228 passing yards, 222 rushing yards. Then Louisville had 366 total yards, 156 passing, then 210 rushing yards.
Yeah, the first three quarters, I mean, Louisville was pretty much dominating. I mean, I know
Yeah.
Clemson was winning at the end of the first, but Louisville still looked like they were in control in the second and third quarters in particular. I was watching mainly the second quarter, and it was a pretty dominant performance. I was very surprising because Louisville's team is not very big.
Yeah.
You know, Clemson on paper
Right.
should be running all over them, but they didn't.
Yeah, they just started off real slow,
Yeah.
which came back to hurt them. I mean, Isaac Brown, the running back for Louisville, he did a great job of reading his blocks.
Yeah.
He was hitting these gaps that, like, normally most running backs wouldn't even see.
Yeah.
He has great vision. He had 20 carries for 151 yards and a touchdown. And then Louisville special teams unit, they were also blocking Clemson's kicks. They blocked 2 kicks.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Yeah, I had more faith in Dabo Swinney. As we talked, he was one of 4 coaches to not have any transfers in the portal. The other 3 being the 3 service academies.
yeah.
So, you know, and you can see why no one was transferring to Army, Navy, and Air
Right.
Force. So the fact that he was the only one and he was still finding success was really, really impressive to me.
Mhm.
And I admired that about him, you know, sticking to his guns and sticking to the traditional methods of college recruitment. But he really faced some adversity, and I think he definitely came in ill-prepared. And even though they started to turn it around in the fourth quarter, it wasn't enough.
Yeah, they got hot at the wrong time. If they got hot a little earlier, they would have probably won.
Agreed.
They were almost playing down to their opponent, and it seems like he didn't really prepare.
Penn State's specialty.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had to get that in. Okay.
Now, both these running backs actually did have a good game. Phil Maffa was Clemson's only spark. He had 30 carries, 171 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And then that's it. The receivers didn't play good. The entire team just didn't play good.
They didn't, yeah. And now Clemson's definitely out of ACC title contention. Again, unless there's some kind of crazy miracle.
Yeah.
But, you know, at this point with 3 weeks left in the regular season, that's not gonna happen.
It's going to be tough.
They slipped to 19, and I think that's very accurate.
Mm-hmm.
I had more faith in them. They let me down.
Yeah, and also,
I was let down twice this week. And Pitt's miserable failure can only do so much to make up for those two.
Right.
For those 2 missteps.
It at least makes up for one of them.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I'm going to say that makes up for Clemson.
Okay,
Nothing can help
yeah.
the pain of Penn State. Okay.
Now,
I keep bringing it back to Penn State.
Yeah.
You can probably sense my frustration. Anyway,
fired
Clemson.
up.
They're down to 19. They're definitely, I would say they're 95% out of the ACC race.
Right.
They'll get a decent bowl game. Dabo Swinney will proclaim that his way is the right way, even though he has yet to make the playoff with this strategy. What's the definition of insanity? Dabo Swinney. That's the definition. I really, that's really all I have to say on them.
Yeah, just one more thing.
They're kind of proving everyone right.
When the game was meaningless, with 6 minutes left, Clemson scored the touchdown. Then they went for the onside kick. And then everyone thought that they got it. They didn't. The refs reviewed it. The fans started throwing trash on the field.
I saw that. I didn't. Okay. I'm so glad you brought that up. I wasn't watching a good chunk of the second half, but I got an alert that Clemson fans were throwing the bottles and debris on the field.
Yeah.
And
I know how mad this gets you.
And I was like, oh my God, I knew that the nauseating Longhorn fan base started a horrible trend.
Yeah.
And
it was meaningless.
Again, and I wasn't angry because I'm obviously not invested in Clemson, so
right.
I didn't feel cheated out of anything. I was just so disgusted and saddened and let down by the fact that now this is going to be a regular occurrence. I hope that the Panther fan base does this, because then I will have a field day. I will have a field day. Go ahead, Pitt fans. I know you're listening to this.
Would it be worse than the Texas rat?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because here's the thing. While I am a Georgia fan, Georgia still killed Texas. Mm-hmm. So in the end, it just made the game, it just allowed me to laugh at Texas even more. But I don't have a hatred for Texas. I really don't. I have a deep, burning discontent with the Pitt Panther fan base. If they start throwing stuff onto the field of Acrisure, oh man, you will hear me going after you like nobody's business.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to sit next to you when that's happening.
Yeah, that's probably not going to be a safe thing. I have friends in the band, and they tell me that it's like a great environment and that they would never. They would never do that. I have a seriously hard time believing that the Panther fan base would not get so riled up that they would not resort to that. I remember the celebrations when they won the ACC in 2021. They were hooligans in the streets. So it's totally within their capabilities. I know they're capable of doing it, and I encourage them to do it so that I can make fun of you on the air. Okay.
So just to wrap it up, this is Louisville's first ever win against Clemson. They're
their first one.
Their first ever win.
Wow.
They're 1-8 versus them. So
well, good for Louisville.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that's
their season's pretty much over, but they'll get a bowl game, and it's a decent year. That program. I feel like, Eric, like every other year, they like kind of have a spark of hope, and then it just kind of they don't even disappoint. They just kind of fade away into oblivion.
Yeah.
So if they can get a couple decent years here, I think it would be interesting for college football. Not necessarily because I think they're going to upset one of the major teams, but I think that they're a really interesting team in that they're very much. It's very much a situation of what an uplifting story, because I feel like after Lamar they became completely irrelevant. Well, they did.
Right.
I don't feel that way. They did.
Yeah.
But ever since the last couple of years, they have a couple 7-6, 8-5 seasons where you're like, they're not a bad team. They're not that bad.
I mean, they're not on anyone's map to take over the
No. And I'm not saying that, but they're a respectable team, and Pitt should look out. Okay. That's it for me. What about you? Okay, so we're moving on to South Carolina and Texas A&M. Eric, what do you have on them?
All right, so South Carolina wins this game at home, 44-20. They had 530 total yards, 244 passing, 286 rushing. A&M, they had 350 total yards, 206 passing, 144 on the ground. Marcel Reed, I think it was a good. I think it was a good idea to start him, but
Yeah.
I think they should have taken him out.
That's fair. I can see the argument.
I think he holds onto the ball for too long a little bit, and he gets hit while he throws,
You're right.
and he's almost like second guessing himself.
He holds the ball a ridiculous. I'm so glad you brought that up. I was watching it a good chunk of the game last night, and he was just.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even call him a sitting duck, but he was taking 2-3 seconds longer than he should to pick a route to throw on. I was surprised.
It was almost like he was second guessing himself, like not trusting himself that he can make the throw.
Yeah, you're the number 10 team in the country, and you're the starting QB. You've clearly found success up to this point. I don't know why South Carolina made you second guess yourself.
Yeah.
Although the South Carolina crowd was into it. I know someone who was at that game, and he told me that it was a great environment.
Yeah.
So, and I was watching, obviously. The crowd on the telecast
insane.
was crazy.
Yeah.
So that was a factor.
Right.
But, I don't know why this team of all teams, despite the environment, I don't know why this team of all teams is the one that made Reed, a little, So I guess this is how I'll put it. I don't know why he was second guessing himself against a aggressively mid team like South Carolina.
Yeah.
I think that's the way I want to put it.
Yeah, for sure. And then, he made a bad decision also.
Yeah.
With 3 minutes left in the game, in the third, sorry. He was trying to throw the ball while his arm was like being pulled down by a South Carolina defender.
Take the sack, man.
Yeah. The ball went straight down to his feet. It actually got ruled a fumble, and then South Carolina jumps on it. Like, you can't be making that. Just go down.
Yeah.
That's just like
I know that they were getting annihilated in
Yeah.
the second half, so you need to, make big plays.
You still got the whole fourth quarter.
Yeah, you got the whole fourth quarter, and they had been. I mean, the second half they got annihilated. They were outscored 24-10. Oh, sorry, 24-0.
Yeah.
In the second half, and obviously the third quarter, they were getting killed. But you just can't throw the ball in that situation.
No.
You just need to be smarter. I also was very surprised. And also, Mike Elko. I was just praising you. What happened, man?
Yeah.
I was just calling this guy a great success story. I wasn't calling him, coach of the year. I still think it's Signetti, but over at Indiana. But I thought that Mike Elko was an incredible story coming and bring that program back from the dead after Jimbo Fisher ran it into the ground. And I was applauding him for it. And then he does a coaching job like he did in the second half, and I'm embarrassed. You embarrassed me, Mike.
Now, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if this is so much coaching though as it is execution.
But coaching is execution. That's the thing.
Yeah, okay.
The whole
got to prepare you guys.
In coaching, you have to show them how to execute.
Yeah, for sure.
That's part of coaching. So you got to blame the coaching because I know Reed's talented. They were 7-1 going into this game. They were 5-0 in the conference going into this game. They were leading the SEC going into this game. So I know that they execute well. So I blame Elko for having this team woefully underprepared.
Yeah.
Woefully underprepared.
Yeah, I don't also like. Yeah, they're way too underprepared, like you said. 0 points in the second half is ridiculous.
Against South Carolina.
Yeah.
Who was 2-3 in conference going into that game. I don't care that the crowd was into it. And they were. But I don't care. You need to win that game. If you're number 10 in the country, you have to win that game.
Yeah,
That
I
is
agree.
ridiculous.
Now, I understand. South Carolina, they started out hot, scored a touchdown. Then they stopped them on 4th and 1 on their own side of the field.
Yeah.
But I don't like that play call with where they ran a QB sneak with Reed.
That was awful.
He's only 180 pounds.
Yeah.
They're trying to surge him forward into a huge defense. Why not just hand it off to your
because
220-pound
Jalen Hurts inspired all these coaches to do the tush push.
Mm-hmm. But Jalen Hurts can squat, 400 some pounds?
That's my point. Jalen Hurts has the size.
Right.
Reed doesn't.
No.
That's the problem.
They have a 220-pound running back, Amari Daniels.
Yeah.
Why not hand it off to him there?
I don't know why they didn't do that. It's ridiculous.
That is one of the bad coaching calls that.
Yeah. Elko,
Yeah.
he's, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think A&M, they're honestly, at this rate, they're going to be in top contention for the SEC title game. We'll see if they can turn it around. Let me pull up their schedule. I haven't looked at their upcoming schedule yet. New Mexico State, at Auburn, and then Texas at home. So they'll win the next 2 games because Auburn, Hugh Freeze, he always chokes in meaningful games. But Texas at home.
I think they lose this game.
Big rivalry game.
Yeah.
And I think Sarkisian is going to have his boys ready to rumble.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. He has a lot to prove after losing by 15 at home to Georgia.
Yeah.
And I think, he has a chip on his shoulder. And see what happens there.
Which also, losing to Georgia, that's not a bad loss. You know what I mean?
It's not.
This is a bad loss.
But Georgia's not a rivalry game.
Right.
The A&M rivalry, there's going to be a lot more pressure on Sarkisian to deliver. Mm-hmm. And Mike Elko's new to that rivalry. Sarkisian isn't.
Yeah.
So I think Sarkisian's experience with that rivalry, plus the fact that they have a chip on their shoulder after the Georgia loss, is going to have them ready to go for that game.
And, yeah, if Texas can just figure them out. Like South Carolina, this game, they were running a lot to the outside. Because Texas A&M, they don't have great contained defense.
They don't.
Where they can force the running back inside.
You're right.
They couldn't stop. They just couldn't stop him on the ground. Lenore Sellers, and Raheem Sanders, they couldn't stop him. Lenore Sanders was running all over the place for Texas A&M.
He was. Yeah, I don't know. I think for now, honestly, Eric, we can put a pin in A&M.
Yeah.
I'm willing to, get back to me in 3 weeks, A&M.
Yeah.
To show up versus Texas and show me that you are legit.
Yeah. Marcel Reed, he just needs time to develop.
Sure.
He can be good.
Yeah.
But
at South Carolina, that is, again, it is in conference.
Mm-hmm.
But South Carolina is aggressively mediocre, and
right.
if you are the number 10 team in the country, you cannot lose that game.
Yeah, I agree.
So I hope, against New Mexico State and against Auburn, he can have some solid performances and he can continue to develop because they're going to need him to have the game of his life to beat a Texas team that's going to be chomping at the bit for them.
It is kind of good, though, that they do play those 2 teams. Just kind of bounce back weeks.
Sure.
Get ready for Texas.
Good bounce back weeks. But I would, if Mike Elko is smart, and right now I don't know if he is, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say that he is. If Mike Elko is smart, he's going to use those 2 games to experiment.
Yep.
And really, really see who is physical.
Yeah.
Physical specifically. Reed's not that physical.
No.
But you're going to the goal for the next 2 weeks is to see who else on the roster can be super physical so that way you can go into Texas with a really, really solid game plan. And maybe you still lose that game, but if you can keep it close, Eric and I will have a lot nicer things to say about you
for sure
than if you get blown out. So for your sake, Mike Elko, play well, and Eric and I won't tear you to shreds.
Yeah, and then South Carolina, they could not, like I said, they couldn't stop Raheem Sanders. He had the greatest game of his career.
Yeah.
2 touchdowns, 236 all-purpose yards. And then
That's a great game.
Lenore Sanders finished 3 for 27, 244 yards in the air, 106 on the ground with a touchdown.
Yeah, good for South Carolina. That's a very good win for their program. Fans stormed the field after the end. They were very happy.
Yeah,
good for them. I'm glad they won. A&M will put a pin in you for a couple weeks.
For sure.
Eric, is that all you got on them?
Yep.
Okay, guys. So thank you very much for listening to episode 3 of Catching the Facts. I hope you enjoyed it as much as Eric and I had a great time recording it. We will see you next Sunday night or Monday morning, depending on when it gets posted, for episode 4, where you will get a first-hand view of the Penn State game because I will be going to the Penn State-Washington game, the whiteout game. So I will be able to give our listeners a first-hand view of exactly what goes on with that team. And I got to say, I'm very, very nervous about Washington, considering the offensive performance that I witnessed yesterday. I really, really am, Eric. I hope it works out.
Yeah.
But, the energy will be amazing. It's a whiteout game. It's a big, big game for them. But we'll see what happens. So until then, I'm Dan Sisk.
And I'm Eric Schroeder.
And we will see you next week.
Hey there, listeners. I'm Matt Boyer, station manager of WSVC Radio. If you like what you're listening to, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and hit that bell button to be notified with all of our newest updates. Every day, one of our shows is releasing a new episode. Stick around and stay tuned.